Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a YouTube message. The first question for today comes from Joey, and it is, what do you think of the Battlefield Hardline leak? I am cautiously optimistic. I'm cautious because, of course, we haven't seen any official gameplay, and we haven't gotten our hands on it. And until we actually can sit down and play Battlefield Hardline, we're really not going to know what we're dealing with. That being said, though, I'm excited because this is some risk-taking. This is a little bit different from a normal Battlefield title, and what I like about it is that this reminds me a lot of what DICE did with the Bad Company series. Bad Company, when it first came out, was way different from Battlefield 2 and their previous Battlefield titles because they were focused more on infantry-based gameplay. The maps were a lot smaller, it was a lot more condensed, and that, for a lot of Battlefielders, didn't sit very well with them. Like, they wanted Battlefield 2, but with updated graphics, and that's not what they got. And to everyone's surprise, the Bad Company series all of a sudden became one of the most beloved and one of the most loved games from the franchise. Like, I think back a Bad Company, and I always think of it in a positive light. Like, I know all of my friends enjoyed Bad Company. Sure, it did have its problems, but for the most part, I would say that DICE hit it out of the park with that series. And that never would have happened if they didn't take some risks. And so, the risk-taking that they're now doing with Battlefield Hardline in this cops versus criminals type of theme gameplay, it's intriguing because it's a little bit different, but it still has all the same qualities that makes a Battlefield title Battlefield. I've been noticed on forums and on the internet, there are people that are saying that because of the theme, that all of a sudden this doesn't make the game Battlefield, or they should just completely eliminate the Battlefield title because it doesn't encompass what the franchise is all about. And I think that's a little bit ridiculous because, yes, it doesn't have large, epic scale warfare, jets and helicopters may not be flying in every single map, but it still has basically every single other quality that makes Battlefield Battlefield. It has team-oriented gameplay, it has a lot of classes, there are vehicles in there, a lot of different mixes of game modes, there's Levolution, there's Destruction, all these things that now encompass Battlefield is in this title, yet it's set in a cops versus robbers theme. And so, once again, like I said, I am cautiously optimistic, and I do not want to hype the game or anything like that, and honestly, do not pre-order Battlefield Hardline. Even if you think that it is going to be the most amazing game, don't pre-order it. There's no reason to do so. Wait for Game Journalist once the game launches to review it for you, and then if it's what you want and if it has the qualities that you're looking for, then go buy the game. Like, I am not trying to get on the hype train by any means, but I am cautiously optimistic, and I am crossing my fingers that Visceral Games is going to be able to hit this out of the park. The next question comes from Owen, and it is, how would you feel about giving each class a gadget that would allow them to disable a tank or a vehicle? You would only be able to disable the vehicle, and it would require the player to go to the back of the vehicle and rip out some cords or something. It would give all classes an advantage so that you don't have to wait for an engineer to come up and blow the vehicle. A very, very long time ago, when I was a little bit more naive, I shared this same idea. I thought that all classes should have some access or some way at taking out a tank or some way at contributing to taking out vehicles, and I thought that every single class should have some sort of gadget that would allow them to slowly take out a tank. And if you're someone who loves to play as the assault class, or if you were someone who played as a recon back in Battlefield 3, this sort of sounded like a great idea, because if you played as those two classes back in the day, it was literally impossible for you to take out those vehicles. And if you had the option to maybe have some sort of gadget that would slowly take out the tank, not be as effective as the engineer or C4 like the support class had, then that could be a way to boost their power or just make it so they didn't feel completely useless in those situations. But after growing as a person and thinking about this a little bit more, it would break down the class dynamic a little bit too much. And if you really think about it, if every single class has the option to take out a vehicle, then the engineer becomes a little bit less useful on the battlefield. Like, of course it's going to be the dominant force. Like, of course the engineer is always going to be number one, the best at taking out tanks. But as soon as you start to blur the lines between all of the classes and they can essentially all do the same things but slightly less effective for certain situations, then the class dynamics starts to crumble, and really classes in general would feel less unique. Like if you're playing as an engineer, if you're using the appropriate gadgets, then you could basically be an assault. Or if you're playing as the assault with a gadget that could take out a tank, then you're not really an assault player at that point. You're playing as an engineer. And so really, why would you even have classes to begin with? And while I 100% understand it is very frustrating if you're playing on a very large open map, you're playing as the assault class and you run across a bunch of tanks, it sucks because you literally are useless in those situations. Maybe you can revive your engineer buddy so that he can get back into the action and start shooting more RPGs, but realistically, you're a sitting duck and you're gonna have to wait for your team to come in. But honestly, that's what Battlefield is all about. It is a team-oriented game, and if you were able to do everything on the battlefield, if you are a super soldier, then that would sort of miss the point of a team-oriented game like Battlefield is. And so, yes, I understand it's a little frustrating, but no, I do not think that every single class should have this option. The next question comes from the Dreadnought, and it is, do you think that DICE will ever fix the issue with head glitching? I mean, where you are behind an object or above me, and I can't see a gun at all, and all I see is the top of your head, yet you can still shoot at me. The game mechanics don't seem to make sense unless I can see your barrel. You shouldn't be capable of hitting me. Head glitching has been a part of first-person shooters for as long as I can remember, and I honestly don't think that there's ever been one where they've completely solved the issue. Maybe you guys will let me know down below in the comment section if a video game has been able to solve this problem, but I necessarily don't think that it is a problem. Like, sure, people like to classify it as head glitching, and glitching is where I think a lot of the issues stem from, because people think, you know, oh, if they're using a glitch, that might be an issue. Well, realistically, head glitching is something that you would see in a real life combat scenario. Like, let's say, for example, there is an enemy and he is behind a barrier and all you can see is his head. He's still got his weapon trained at you, he is still looking at you through his scope and he's about to take you out, but he once again only has his head exposed and he's looking at you through his iron sights. And that is what I would be doing in those situations. Like, I don't want to have my entire body exposed. Like, if I have the option to have as a limited amount of my body out in the open, allowing people to shoot at me, that's what I'm going to do. And that's essentially what's happening in first-person shooters, because if you are behind a barrier and you're looking at someone, you have your weapon raised to your eyeball. And so if you have your weapon raised to your face, yes, it may not register that the enemy can see your weapon, but that's basically what's happening in those situations. And if it was a real-life combat scenario, you would have your weapon all the way up to your face and you would lift it above the barrier. And so at that point, the enemy would still be seeing only the top of your head and maybe your shoulders. And so honestly, I don't think that this is as large of an issue as people really make it out to be. Yes, it can be annoying. Yes, it can be a little frustrating when all you can see is maybe like the very, very tip of their head. That's where things get a little bit shaky. But for the most part, they're taking advantage of the environment around them. They're not out in the open. They're behind a barrier. They're making themselves a harder target to shoot, and so that they're going to have an advantage over you. Like, that is a tactical and that is a smart thing to do in a first-person shooter. And so I think you might be getting stuck up on the whole glitch part of head glitching. It's not really a glitch, it's just part of first-person shooters and the limitations of the animations and the avatars of the soldier, and I honestly don't think it's as large of a problem as people make it out to be. The next question comes from Andrew, and it is, what do you think of the idea of DICE releasing a weapons-only DLC pack where they either add new weapons or previous weapons from old Battlefield games? I am a little hesitant about weapon-only DLCs, because if you go down that path, it sounds more like pay to win than more of a service that DICE would be adding at that point. You could say that that's pretty much what is already occurring with Battlefield Premium. We're getting all these new maps, which is great. We're getting new content, but it's also coming along with these weapons. And if you are not a premium member and you're going against people that are using premium weapons, you may feel like you're at a disadvantage. And that is something that people have brought up, and that is a valid argument. Like, that is a valid concern with the Battlefield franchise. But as soon as you create a weapons-only DLC that doesn't have the blurred lines of more content with new maps and new vehicles, I think at that point people would cry foul. They would say that I've already spent my $50. I'm now going against players that just bought the weapon pack, and they now have an advantage over me. And I know it honestly doesn't make any sense. Like, I know it doesn't make sense because it's essentially what we have right now with Premium, but in my mind, and I have a feeling with the mind of a lot of players out there, where if they only came out with an expansion pack that was just weapons, people would be very, very upset. And I think it's for that very reason why I would not expect a weapons-only DLC for Battlefield, and really for pretty much a lot of first-person shooters out there, or at least competitive first-person shooters. And while I know it is very appealing, I know that many of you out there want to have your AN-94, you want to have your futuristic XM8 and all that good stuff from like Bad Company. I don't think that this is the path that DICE is going to take, or even if they should go down it. But that's about it for today's Sunday Mailbox, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, if you would like to submit your own question that can be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a YouTube message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.